What is up, sports fans and fans of the sports court? I'm Eddie Cox alongside Greg Beatty, and we are thrilled to get this show at you guys today. I know y'all been following the NBA playoffs, as we have as well, and Chris Paul's been just phenomenal. Stay tuned. We're not going to talk about them first, but we're going to get right into that real quickly after we talk about some of the other things going on. College football playoff, possibly expanding, the Astros doing well, some NFL minicamp talk. But first, we're going to talk about the MLB and their efforts to stop this spider tack substance that pitchers are using to increase their spin rate. And there's a whole lot of aspects of this that we can get into, Greg. But what was your initial thoughts? I know you heard about the memo that came out. If you guys are unaware, there was a memo released by Major League Baseball. Players caught using any substance to help them increase their spin rate or are found with that type of substance will be suspended with pay for 10 games. Greg, what was your first thoughts on that?
Well, my first thoughts were that players suspended for 10 games with pay was pretty much just an extended vacation.
Sounds like it.
That's my first thought. I mean, I've never understood when people get suspended and they get paid. I mean, it's like, well, I guess you can look at it both ways in the sense that if you do get suspended, obviously that's your first strike. And then if you continue to do things of that kind, you obviously will probably, the next suspension and the punishment the next time will be more severe. So you obviously go on a certain list. So I guess in that regard, you're actually getting punished in the sense that you're actually on the list of being a cheater. But you know what? If you notice, Eddie, all of the low batting averages in MLB right now, I mean, these guys now, of course, the Houston Astros, which we'll talk about here in a second, but of course the Houston Astros were the worst people in the world for doing what they did. But now you have these pitchers like Trevor Bauer, who was suspected of doing it, and on and on and on.
Well, lo and behold, the Dodgers are a team that supposedly this is the most prevalent on, where they're using it the most.
And they're the ones who complain about the Astros the most. But you have pitchers doing this.
You can't beat them, join them. That's what they say.
Right. And the thing about it is, a baseball is already hard to hit as it is. It's the most difficult thing to do in sports, in my opinion. And you have these guys, big, strong guys these days, throwing upwards of 100 miles an hour. If you look at Jacob deGrom, I mean, even after the alleged substance, I was about to say substance abuse, but it is substance abuse.
It is in a way.
I've
even heard people refer to this as a performance-enhancing substance.
Well, the thing I was
and that
say
these players should be treated just like the players that use steroids have been treated by baseball. I don't know where I stand on that. I think I have to disagree with that.
Well, you know what? And what I was going to say about Jacob deGrom is, Jacob deGrom, even in this last outing, he was still hitting the radar gun as upwards of 100 miles an hour. I mean, this guy is phenomenal. He's the best pitcher in baseball right now. I think the last I checked, he had an ERA under 1 run. I mean, the Mets are rolling right now, and that's because Jacob deGrom, who pitches once every 4 days. You know how I feel about pitchers winning MVPs. I'm not crazy about a pitcher winning an MVP anyway because they play once every 4 games. But Jacob deGrom, he's something special right now, and he was still hitting the radar gun at 100. But you have these guys, they say that it helps in the velocity so much. Now, a baseball is already hard to hit. These guys are already throwing heat, and they're throwing jump. So there's a lot of movement on these pitches, and you have that added element and that help from a foreign substance. I just don't think that's right. And now you see why, part of the reason why some of these batting averages are so low across the board in MLB. And so hopefully they nip this in the bud. Hopefully these pitchers and these teams, they get the picture and they realize, I've already heard that some of these teams have already asked some of these pitchers who's been known for doing that, they've already asked them to start practicing without using the foreign substance. So this is a great job by MLB to hopefully nip this in the bud, make the penalty severe, 10 games. Now for a pitcher, obviously that's 2 starts. But again, so we'll see where it goes from here. We'll see if these batting averages escalate because of it, and we'll see what happens. But I like the fact that Major League Baseball is getting on top of it.
And there's another thing, there's another aspect this to as well. There's another side of it. You got to look at how pitchers. Look at me, man. I'm all over the place today. Who gave me a cherry Pepsi? I don't react well to caffeine before we get on the air. But the way hitters approach hitting these days, it's a whole lot different than it used to be. You look at hitters like, and Tony Gwynn's come out and spoke about it specifically, and this is the guy who I'm referring to with this point. He urges people to
Who
look
has?
at Tony Gwynn.
Okay.
To look at the other side of things and look at how hitters are trying to hit the ball using launch angle and
Tony
trying
Gwynn?
to. Yeah.
I thought Tony Gwynn passed.
Am I mistaken that Tony Gwynn Jr., right?
Oh, probably Junior. Okay,
Junior. Okay. Yeah, of course, Tony Gwynn.
I'm like, am I tripping?
No, Tony Gwynn Jr.,
Okay,
who we
God
know,
rest his soul,
obviously,
Tony
his
Gwynn.
father was a great hitter.
Right, one of the best of all time.
Look, you can't
right
be throwing me curveballs right now. I'm already struggling to get through this tape.
I was like, Tony Gwynn, he rose from the dead and said that then. Okay,
Well, I mean, if he saw the way people were hitting today, he just might.
I know, right?
It's all about
Real
hitting
talk.
the ball in the air, trying to get what they call launch angle, getting underneath the baseball. And it's not just in Major League Baseball. You look all the way down. My son, he's 13 years old. He plays select baseball year-round. Mm-hmm. They've been teaching hitting with launch angle since they were 9 years old, 10 years old. And that's not the way I was taught when I played baseball. But this is the way the game is going, and this is where these kids, these prospects, Major League scouts are looking for them to hit the ball like this. This is what they want. And you'll see a gradual decline in batting averages and in good contact hitting the more players put an emphasis on trying to hit the ball in the air. Think about Aaron Judge. The guy's a phenomenal hitter. When he gets a hold of it, good Lord, the ball flies.
Right.
But he strikes out a whole lot. He doesn't hit for a high average. He's hit or miss, as they say, literally. He's either going to hit the ball out of the ballpark or he's going to go take a seat on the pine.
Right.
There really is no in-between with that guy. But look, he's a mega star.
Yes.
So that's what they're teaching kids to do. And if baseball isn't going to philosophically change the way, if Major League Baseball isn't going to change the way they're approaching it, then you're still going to see a decline in the offense. Where Major League Baseball messed up, Greg, where they screwed this all up in the beginning, is when they decided they were going to try to juice the baseball or try to add offense or inject offense into the game. And then what happened was it ended up being too much. But people love it. But the old historians, the baseball Puritans, they don't like it. It's too much.
What they say, chicks dig the long ball?
They do. They really do.
The home run.
But now it seems like Major League Baseball, there's too much hitting. Now we got to try to do this to the baseball.
Right.
And now that we've deadened the baseball, now we got to make sure that the pitchers aren't cheating and striking too many batters out. Like, which way do you want it?
I know,
I
right?
haven't seen any sports organization struggle with their rules and struggle with trying to get parity and play and fair play as much as Major League Baseball. It's ridiculous. And it brings me all back around to when is Rob Manfred, when is his job going to be in question? Like, when are they going to finally find somebody else who can get Major League Baseball back on the right track? Because they're the ones who screwed this up to begin with. You can't really blame the players for what they're doing.
But you know what, too? And who knows about Rob Manfred? And I totally agree that these guys are always tinkering with the rules, and they still haven't taken care of the main thing. And why a lot of people has actually gotten away from watching baseball because they just think the game, they're trying to enhance it by not make the game more boring, by scoring more runs and hitting more home runs. But the game is still too long, way too often. And then they brought the shift in. So if you want more runs scored, teach these guys to make contact with the baseball. But then now you have the shift. You have the shift where these guys, it's hard to get the ball through the infield and to the outfield on a ground ball because you have it to where these position players can just position themselves in a way that just – you have a shortstop that's pretty much sitting in right field damn near.
Yeah, but you know what drives me crazy? Is you'll have a guy go up to bat, and he knows damn well that the shift is on, and he probably, if he wanted to, could just put the barrel of the bat on the ball and poke it down. Yeah, poke it down the line, but they won't do it. They'll continue to swing and hit into the shift over and over again, and I don't feel for them. If that's what the defense wants to do, if they're going to give you holes in the field to hit at, then I think hitters should try to hit at them, and maybe that would deter a team from doing the shift or from using it so much.
Because there's times, to that point, there's times where there's literally not a third baseman over there even close to the third base bag. No. And all you do in a situation like that is you wait for a pitch that's probably on the outside part of the plate, and you just take what the pitcher gives you, bam, and you drive the ball to where the third baseman. I know this, I make it sound easy, and I know it's not that easy, but you be selective on your pitches, and when you find a pitch that you can probably accomplish that goal with, that's when you jump on it. You have to be more selective on pitches, and I agree. You have to take what the offense gives or take what the defense gives you in that regard. So I've seen guys in that situation try to take advantage of it, and they'll actually bunt the baseball. I remember back, Whitey Herzog, back, I think it was like 82 or 83, but back when the St. Louis Cardinals, they were so exciting back then with Ozzie Smith and all those guys. They won the World Series, I think, in 82, I think it was. You had Hernandez, you had Ted Simmons, who was brought over from the Milwaukee Brewers, and he won. I think he won in '82. He won the actual MVP.
Oh yeah, I remember.
In the World
No, I'm
Series.
kidding. I don't remember.
Ted Simmons. But what I was gonna say about the St. Louis
I
Cardinals.
don't know.
But he was actually traded. I forget the other catcher. He was a Hall of Famer. It's not Gary Carter because Gary Carter was with the Mets. But Ted Simmons was traded for another catcher, a big time catcher at that time. But one thing about the St. Louis Cardinals and Herzog, they had a lot of speed, and he emphasized they had guys like Willie McGee, who was a rookie that year, man center field, Vince Coleman. That's when they had a lot of stolen bases. Guys were stealing more bases. They were about getting on base and manufacturing runs any way possible. But get on base, utilize your speed, and make contact with the baseball. But now, like you say, they've changed the game so much. Guys, that's why you see the stolen bases are down tremendously. Back in the day, you had guys like Ricky Henderson, those guys stealing 100 bases a year. Vince Coleman, 80, 90 bases a year. Tim Raines, all those guys. Because the emphasis was getting on base and making things happen, causing havoc on the base pass. Now these teams don't operate like that. Like you said, it's all about the launch angle. It's all about trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark. So therefore, what you're seeing these guys swing for the fences instead of being more selective on pitches, taking what the defense gives them, and just getting on base and manufacturing runs that way. It's either home run or nothing. And now, again, going back to what the original topic is about the substance on the baseball. So now you have these pitchers who are doctoring up the baseball, and it's just a recipe for disaster, especially for the hitters. But these pitchers are continuing to get paid from it. They're making millions and well, all of them making millions of dollars playing baseball, but they're getting these astronomical contracts, and most of them are cheating. Most of them are cheating.
And a lot of people feel like it's not that big a deal. And even sometimes, in my mind, I'm like, let them use the stuff. But it states in the rules, no foreign substances can be used. No, spitballs were a big deal back in the day. I know nothing about it because it's way before I was ever even thought of them. I think before my dad was even thought of. However, it was outlawed because the movement that you could get on the ball whenever you add a foreign substance to it. This is a very similar deal, except the spin rate that they're getting, the amount of spin that they're getting,
yes,
it affects the way the ball comes off the bat. It affects the way the ball moves in the zone and through the zone. It's cheating. If you know that there's a rule that states that you cannot do it and you're doing it, it's cheating. I'm not going to put you in a category with people who took steroids because I think there's something different in my mind to applying something to your fingertips as there is to injecting something into your body or taking a substance that's going to enhance you biologically. Not necessarily a little. I mean, you look at batters with pine tar. If the batter can use a little bit of pine tar, why couldn't a pitcher use this substance? Well, we can argue about whether or not the rule's fair all day long. The fact of the matter is the rule is there that they can't, so they shouldn't.
Okay,
now, I think maybe they should allow them to, really.
Well,
and I don't think they should have ever messed with the baseball to begin with. They should have never juiced it. They should have never deadened it. Who the hell knows how to get it back to zero? Can somebody balance it back out? Can we get a ball shipped through time from 1975 so we can see what an actual baseball is supposed to be like, and then we make them like that from here on out and we start over? Something needs to be done.
Yeah, well, it will. Because even in 1975,
and it's not a 10-day vacation.
Right.
Let's just put it that way.
Right. And obviously in 1975, people didn't hit as many home runs, even though you had big-time home run hitters that were doing it allegedly legit. Reggie Jackson and all those guys, George Foster, the Big Red Machine.
Well, think about if they were.
But now,
think about how they taught them how to hit. Think about level bat through the strike zone.
Right. Again, getting on base,
linear hitting,
runs. Utilizing the speed that you have on the team and doing it the right way.
And how much do you think? I have to look.
Now, do you think the pitchers, Eddie? Do you think the pitchers are actually do you think they've been doing this even when these guys were using steroids, and that was their way of combating the steroid use.
I think that there's a lot of stuff that's going on in Major League Baseball. A lot of, wink, wink, nod, nod, this and that,
People used
and
to
it's
take
been
greenies
passed
and all this
along
and that.
from player to player, little tricks on how you can get something on your fingertips. They say it used to be the bill of the cap, or just somewhere you could put
But again,
it.
the spin rate, like you say.
But what I'm trying
that's
to say,
big time,
this has probably been going on for who knows how
It
long.
probably has. I'm
it's
sure it
it's
has.
part of the gamesmanship of baseball, and that's why a lot of the people who are not are unbiased and they're fans of the game, they realize that the Astros and all the heat that they took may have been a little much whenever there's probably, you could say, more than 50% of baseball participating in illegal activities on the diamond one way or another. And you can't tell me that one cheating is way worse than the other. If we're going to talk about, if you're going to say these guys cheated, they should be stripped of something, then you have to say that
And
with the same breath of any
pay.
other team, and any other form of cheating.
Right. And see, and my thing is, one reason I disagree that they should be allowed to do it is because you've cracked down on the steroid use. So in any performance-enhancing drug, you're drug testing these guys periodically, regularly, or whatever. And so you're not. So it just puts the hitters at a complete disadvantage if you're allowing these pitchers to have that added substance or that added advantage. And so I think what this does, I think they're trying to level the playing field, and they're trying to see more guys hit the baseball and these batting averages go up. And in their opinion, that's going to make the game funner. It's going to make the game more fun. It's going to make people want to watch more because guys are actually making contact with the baseball, and they're not. And more guys. It's not going to be so many guys come up to the plate, and the next thing you see, they're walking back to the dugout because they struck out or something like that. So it's going to generate more offense, obviously. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's MLB moving in a positive direction to try to level the playing field. And let's see how these pitchers who've been doing this every game, let's see how they adjust. Again, that's why I made the point about Jacob deGrom. He still came out last game and was throwing upwards of 100 miles an hour, and he still looked like he had the same spin rate as he always had. Now let's see over time if all these guys, let's see how their numbers continue to look, if they wane or if they progress or stay the same or what. Guys like Trevor Bauer, who was first accused of doing it a while back when this season started. Now all these guys are included, and let's see if they can get used to pitching without the substance and see how it really affects their game.
Well, that's what you're going to find in the coming days. How many pitchers does it affect? Do we see a noticeable difference or not? I don't know. What I'm going to be paying attention to is whether or not Major League Baseball is going to stop taking such a short-sighted approach to solving their problems. It seems like somebody needs to come in and really take a look at this whole thing, outside the box and as a whole. What rules need to be evaluated and changed? What rules can be manipulated? What rules are ambiguous? Figure it all out, straighten it out, and get this show on the right track, because I love Major League Baseball. I know you do too.
Absolutely,
now, real quick,
absolutely.
how does this pertain? How do you think this is going to pertain to the Houston Astros? How do you think it's going to affect them? Do you think they're already hitting the ball lights out? So if they get any better because of this, that's almost hard to imagine, but I guess they could. How do you think it affects the pitching staff?
Oh, now the pitching staff. Now, of course you don't have Verlander, and you have a lot of young guys on this pitching staff. Now, I don't know if some of these veterans.
They've been good, not great, but when their starting pitching is good, they win a lot of games.
I think it may. I don't know if all those guys. I don't know if these youngsters were using it. So who knows if they were actually using it? A lot of these youngsters.
Not my kids. Not my son.
You see, that's the thing.
You talk about the Astros, not my boys.
You have guys like Verlander and these guys. Of course, Verlander is out, but you have these old school guys in there who's probably been using it. Now, I don't know if they've hipped some of these young guys to it, and they've been dependent on the substance as well. But if they haven't been using the substance, I think it'll probably level off the playing field for them as well, as far as compared to other pitchers. Now you might see some pitchers who's been using the substance come back down to earth a little bit, and their numbers will be more compatible with some of these Astros pitchers. But the Astros have some young talent on that team, on the pitching staff, like we've talked about. And hopefully they can continue, Dusty can continue to use those guys the correct way, and they can continue to improve, because the offense, now how it's going to help the offense, if you see Michael Brantley right now, the way he's playing right now, I mean, he's playing big time right now. That's a tremendous bat you have in
Yeah,
that lineup.
he didn't miss a beat coming back from the injury.
He did not miss a beat. And all up and down that lineup, I think
And he's
Straw is
big
better.
time. It's big time to have him up in the 2 spot. I
Mm-hmm.
know Dusty might have taken some criticism from people thinking that Carlos Correa needs to stay up in the top of the order. However, when you see Michael Brantley perform in that spot, you realize he really is a guy that could bat anywhere,
He
1
gets on
through
base
4.
more.
He's that good of a hitter.
Yes.
And the fact that you can interject a lefty right there in your lineup when you have Altuve right off the bat, then they got to face a lefty. It really makes things difficult for teams facing the teeth of your lineup late in games where they may make some decisions and go deeper into their bullpen than they have to, and where that really pays dividends is when you get in the playoffs.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And then again, you cannot take a break against anyone in that lineup. Jordan Alvarez is still playing at a very high level, and he's only going to get better. Correa, Bregman, who's I think leading in early All-Star voting for third baseman right now.
He's second.
Altuve, okay, second.
There's no Houston Astro as of yesterday. I haven't looked today. Was leading at their position for the
Okay.
All-Star ballot, but there was
Bregman will make
3
the
guys
team.
that were second.
Yeah, right. So all up and down that lineup: Correa, Altuve, Brantley. I mean Jordan Alvarez. I can go on and on. That's without George Springer, obviously, who's in Toronto. And speaking of Toronto, real quick, Vlad Guerrero Jr.
First to
This
20.
Huh?
First to 20.
He's probably he definitely has a chance to win the Triple Crown, but he is definitely coming into his own this year. I'm talking about the top prospect. He was ahead of Fernando Tatis when they were in the minors, and Tatis was the second highest rated prospect. Both of those guys, and I've talked about it on the show, we've talked about it, they're having tremendous years. But Vlad Guerrero Jr., and we all know Vlad Guerrero Sr., Hall of Famer, but Vlad Guerrero Jr. with the Blue Jays is having a monster year. And these pitchers not being able to use that substance is only going to help these hitters, and he's only going to mash it
It
more.
may not even matter with a guy like that.
They got special.
Now, I'll be out at the ballpark
and
tomorrow.
Tatis.
I'm going to get a
And
first-hand look at Zach Greinke. He's going to go against the Rangers in Game 2 of the series. McCullers back for the first time in, I think, over a month.
Now maybe they can amend for that sweep that the Rangers put on them not too long ago.
And it came at the most inopportune time. It came at a time where the Astros were feeling like they were really starting to gain some ground and get back to being the old Astros. And then, boom, they got shellacked by the Rangers. But right now, from then till now, a completely different Astros team. They faced some of the toughest teams. If not the toughest teams in baseball, between the Dodgers, the Padres, the Red Sox, and every single one of these series, they've come out on top. Now, you can't say unscathed. Now, they did drop 2 or 3 to the Padres, but that was a series. Both games went to extra innings in which they lost.
Yes.
And you could, the ball bounces one way or the other. We could be talking about the
won that
Astros
series.
have swept that
Right,
series.
right.
But, I'm excited to look at Lance. I think he definitely has to be healthy for this team to be as good as they can be. And I want them to kick this series off with a win. And I'm going to get a look at old Zach Greinke, because him being the wily vet, it makes me wonder. I'm not sure if he needs the substance, the way he uses spin and different types of movement on his ball. He's that crafty. He may not need it. But I'm curious to see what his stuff looks like tomorrow, and I'll be watching closely.
Hey, man, we'll have fun at the game. It should be a very fun game, and I know you're going to have fun out there. The Astros, they're playing very well right now. They're 2.5 games behind the Oakland Athletics right now. The A's have still been able to keep the Astros at bay for the most part right now, but as potent as the Astros firepower is on offense, I just really want to see if the A's are going to be able to keep them at bay like that. But the Houston Astros, appreciate that. But the Houston Astros, man, right now are playing at a high level. And your boy Dallas Keuchel in with Chicago White Sox right now. The White Sox, again, Tony La Russa has those guys playing at a high level. But Dallas Keuchel he's back to his old form right now. He's playing well as well. And so, hey, baseball season, a long season, and we're going to continue to monitor and talk baseball on this show, definitely.
Yeah, especially if you're following along and you're from this city in Houston. We know of all the teams, the Houston Astros are the one team that we're still, we're fully on that bandwagon, and that team still has championship aspirations, and we're going to be there. The sports court, Greg Beatty and myself, we're going to be there every step of the way.
Absolutely.
Now, moving on, the NBA playoffs.
Uh-oh.
Man, Now I know we had a comment and I didn't see who it was. Let me get it right. Torrey Jefferson.
Okay.
He wants to hear about the Nets.
That's
So we
one of
were
my
going to talk a
college
little
bro-
bit
that's one
about
of
the
my college
Suns
road dogs
first,
right there.
but we can go ahead and talk about this 2-2 matchup. I mean, after the first two games between the Bucks and the Nets, I thought this one was going to be a sweep. I mean, after what we saw Milwaukee do, it's hard to see them just laying over. But I didn't expect them to come back and win two in a row. I didn't expect this series to be where it's at. Jaws are jacking all over the floor. Players are dropping. Harden's been out. Now Kyrie Irving, we don't know when he's coming back. Greg, can Kevin Durant take over and lift this team to a Game 5 victory? This is a pivotal Game 5.
That game is on. I mean, that game is actually on right now, and I'm curious to know.
I'll get it for you.
Okay, but can Kevin Durant? Kevin Durant is so special that he should be able to, or I think he has the ability to win a game by himself, like all the greats can do. I mean, but the thing about it is,
Got about 30 minutes till tip-off for that one.
Okay. But PJ Tucker is so physical, and what the Bucks are doing with Kevin Durant right now, you can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. But PJ Tucker is a tough matchup, and now KD still may go for 40 or 50 tonight.
He's going to have to. If you ask Vince Carter, he's going to have to. Vince Carter says he needs at least 40 if they're going to win this game.
At least 40. But PJ Tucker is going to make it rough on him. PJ Tucker is probably going to use all his fouls. But PJ Tucker is going to elbow him and try to get physical with him. KD has to keep his composure and just do what he know he can do. I mean, and that's just pretty much just wreck shop. So KD has that ability. He can get his shot from anywhere on the floor, and he can take you off the dribble. He can shoot the three. So, but what's going to happen is he's going to have some of those other players really step up and give him some help. Now, James Harden, he's questionable for tonight. He may come back. I don't know how effective he'll be. I don't know if he will be favoring that hamstring if he does come back. Hopefully, if he does come back, he can last and he can really be the James Harden that we know. But you get James Harden back in the fold.
Don't feel comfortable about it, man. Hamstrings.
I mean, that's tough. Now, he went out the last time he went out.
And it's a re-injury as well, because this is the same one from earlier in the year that he was having problems with.
Now, he said it was a hamstring. His hamstring got tight. So I don't know if he re-injured it as far as he strained it again or if they're just being cautious and to where it's not tight. But who knows? We will see tonight. But if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, I go at James Harden. I make him play defense. I make him change directions as often as possible to really test that hamstring, because what you want to do, you want to keep those guys on the bench. You want to win by any means necessary. Now, make no mistake about it. Once Milwaukee won that last game without Kyrie and James Harden, yeah, you take a win when you can get it. And it's not their fault that the guys got hurt. And, of course, you go out there and you handle your business. But, of course, I had to put an asterisk on that one. For the simple fact you're playing without Kyrie, who left in the first quarter. I was going to let you make it without James Harden because you still had to go against Kyrie and Kevin Durant. But if Kyrie Irving and James Harden are out for the remainder of the series, I don't think KD can win that series for them by himself.
There it is. You just answered Torrey's question right there. That was
can he win the series? Now, a game,
he wants
maybe.
to know if they can just win, period, without Harden and Kyrie.
KD would have to go off, but what will have to happen is guys like Joe Harris, all these other guys are going to have to really help KD, and they're going to have to play over their heads. And when KD drives the basketball and he dishes it out to one of those guys, especially a guy like Joe Harris, he's going to have to make it happen. Bruce Brown, you may have to get DeAndre Jordan in there at some point to even though Giannis has really not been getting to the rim as much as he normally does, there's still what you want to do. You want to be able to wall off that lane. You want to be able to wall off that lane and continue to make Giannis beat you from the outside, shooting jump shots and whatnot. Because when he gets to the rim, when he gets to the basket at will like that, which he's been able to do on occasion, but if he continues to do that, if that's the game plan then you have to incorporate somebody like DeAndre Jordan and have some kind of resistance at the rim to deter Giannis from getting to the rim like that. But Giannis do not want to go shoot free throws that often. But I think a lot of time Giannis settles for three-point shots. That three-point shot looks bad.
It's not pretty.
It's not pretty at all. But KD is so special, and KD is going to come out tonight. he's going to be cooking, and I'm anxious to see exactly what the Nets are going to be able to do because who knows when Kyrie is coming back with that ankle injury. But now you have Harden back. That's some more punch that you will have. But again,
Yeah, if he's in there, and I don't know.
you have to
I
go
mean,
at him though. You have to go at it.
If he's not 100% and the hamstring's not 100% or close to it, it's hard for me to put him out there. I would take my chance with KD, especially knowing how talented of a player that he is, because let's face it, they're going to need James Harden, especially if Kyrie Irving has an injury that's going to cause him to miss a substantial amount of time. They're going to need these guys if they're going to get to the NBA Finals.
Right. Now here's the kicker to that.
But if you lose this series,
yeah, exactly.
I understand what you're saying.
Series,
Your backs aren't against the wall yet, and with a hamstring, man, you're taking a big chance.
I mean, really, because if he pulls up again tonight, because again, if you're Milwaukee and if they're smart, you make him run. You get out in the break, you get out in transition, and you really test that hamstring. Giannis is probably going to push the pace. And the thing about and then you have guys like Drew Holiday, who's a point guard, but he's really essentially on that team. He's not a point guard because you have Giannis controlling the show. But whoever gets the rebound, the Bucks want to get in transition when you have James Harden in the game, and you want to make him. You want to put some wear and tear on that hamstring and see what happens. And again, they're going to try to get physical with KD, but I just think KD is so special that he's going to come out. He's going to have between 40 and 50 tonight. So I can see the Nets winning tonight because of Kevin Durant. But if James Harden is not able to go, then he's going to test it out before the game and see what happens. But if he's not able to go and Kyrie is out for the series, I just think the Bucks are going to advance, and
they could be in big trouble,
yeah.
And especially if the Bucks are playing with all the momentum now after snatching these last two games up. James Harden is a player that, if he's not 100%, you could get in this guy's head. I mean, even when he is 100%, but if he's got his minds on other things, if he's worried about the hamstring, you really think he's going to be thinking as well as he needs to be on defense on a team that's already shorthanded and doesn't have as stout a bench as they might have if they weren't such a top-heavy roster. James Harden, if he's going to be out there, he needs to be 100%. Now, P.J. Tucker, this is the X factor right here. P.J. Tucker, because I know Kevin Durant's looking across the half-court line at P.J. Tucker and thinking, you son of a gun. You found a way to get in my way again. You thorn in my side. And he's been that way.
And P.J. Tucker's going at him, too.
Since he's played with the Rockets. They had some great matchups, whenever KD was over there with the Warriors. And his presence has been felt, P.J. Tucker, that is, in this series more than I've seen it in any other series. He gives the Bucks the toughness that they lack from Giannis Antetokounmpo and guys like Chris Middleton. Not that those guys aren't really tough, but P.J. Tucker just brings it on another level.
Right.
He brings grit that most players just don't have.
He does.
And when you see him face-to-face with KD, that giant man, he's right up there nose to nose like they almost kiss.
6'11" point guard, pretty much.
PJ knows what he's doing. He's getting inside of Kevin Durant's head. He's letting him know that he's coming at him with everything he's got. For all we know, PJ Tucker, he doesn't have that many years left or much time. I mean, he's already playing, less minutes than he's played, than he used to play with Houston.
They're trying to keep his legs fresh.
He's doing everything that he can to stop KD, and I'm not sure if they're able to put the clamps on them, and by the clamps meaning they're able to hold KD to 30 points or less. Then Milwaukee's going to win this basketball game, and they're going to win this series.
Well,
that's how I feel flat out.
Well, you know what? If James Harden isn't able to go and Kyrie isn't able to go, then what you do everything. You throw the kitchen sink at Kevin Durant, and you make these other guys beat you.
Absolutely.
You do not let Kevin Durant beat you. You trap him as much as possible, the same way that the Clippers pretty much did to Donovan Mitchell, and you don't let him get into the lane. And we'll talk about the Clippers and the Jazz later, even though Donovan Mitchell had 37. But you throw the kitchen sink at Kevin Durant, and you make him work, you make him earn it, you make him play defense, and you try to wear him down physically. And that's what P.J. Tucker, with his physicality, that's what he's been trying to do. And pretty much just going at KD. You see KD complaining to the refs a lot and things like that. But tonight, KD is going to have to come out, and he's going to have to just bring it. I mean, So
here it is. James Harden is going to play tonight. So he's going to be out there. They have cleared him to play.
Well, that's another option. That'll open things up for KD even more because you're going to have to pay attention to James Harden because he's that special of a player. again.
Let me
But you test that hamstring
let me ask
early
you
and
too.
often.
How much of this? Like, there's a report, ESPN.com, that Steve Nash says that Harden is the one really pushing to make his return. It's not the other way around. The team pushing him. Harden's pushing to make this return.
Right.
As I just mentioned in my last take, like, this is a guy who is not, the poster child for toughness. He's never been seen as that kind of player. As a matter of fact, it's been the opposite, where he sort of faded in these moments. Harden, him being Harden, and Kevin Durant, they both face, turning points, or what's the word I'm looking for? They're facing pivotal points in their career where they can prove certain things that they haven't ever been able to prove before. Kevin Durant can prove that he can win essentially almost by himself, because even though James Harden is out there, he's not going to be 100%.
Right,
I'm saying it right now.
No,
We're going to
course
see a
not.
limited
Of course
version
not.
of
Yes.
James Harden, maybe a lot of catch and shoot stuff from James Harden. Kevin Durant has an opportunity to show that he can be
That he can carry a team
LeBron
on his
James
back by
like. I mean,
himself,
he's the one guy that we always say could be better than LeBron James, may be the best player in the world, but yet he is yet to do some of the things that we've seen a guy like LeBron James do. And this is an opportunity for
carry a
him.
team by himself.
Yes, and this is an opportunity for him to do that. Harden, it's an opportunity for him to show he can battle through injury and he can show up in a big pivotal Game 5 where the Nets desperately need this one, because if they fall down in 3-2, I'm not so sure they're going to be able to climb back and win 2 in a row.
Right, because Kevin Durant, James Harden, he doesn't want to end the season like this, because that's why he went to the Nets to capture a championship, and he doesn't want to go out like this. Now, obviously, if you have a pulled hamstring or whatever, and you can't go, you can't go. It's a soft tissue injury, and James Harden wants to be out there. And if he can go, he's going to go. Like you said, he's going to play tonight. But he wants to make sure that he goes out with guns blazing. And he wants to go out with a chance to capture that championship. He knows that Kevin Durant can't do it on his own. He sees Kyrie Irving is out already. So that trio is not together as it is as of right now. So if he's healthy, he's going to give it all he has. And he wants to go out swinging. And he wants to put his imprint on this series and see if he can get his Brooklyn Nets to that next round, and ultimately Casper the friendly ghost, and ultimately capture that championship. So I admire him for wanting to play tonight and for wanting to play the last couple of games if he could have. And I also understand from the Nets' point of view, if you put him out there too soon and he ruptures that hamstring, and then that pretty much kills your chances to capture a championship for the most part, because you're going to need all three of those guys.
This game right here, Game 5, and they will need all three if they're going to win
If
the
you're
Larry
going to be
O'Brien.
like Phoenix or the Jazz or
This
the
game right here,
Clippers.
to me, this is must-see TV. This
you
is
know
going to
what,
tell
too?
me a lot about who these two players really are, because they're two of the most polarizing players in the sport when you talk about Kevin Durant and James Harden. Kevin Durant on a personal and player level, James Harden more about just what he does on the court. I think he's sort of lauded for his lifestyle off the court and living at the strip clubs and all that flashiness and all that. I think he's liked because of that. But Kevin Durant is a player that's criticized for a lot of the things that he says, a lot of the way the way he carries himself online and in social media, and then also on the court,
Get off that damn
and
social
how
media.
he's gone from OKC to Golden State, and that's where he became a champion. Hey, this Game 5, I'm going to find out how much heart Kevin Durant really
You know
has.
what? That's not a question to me. I know Kevin Durant has tremendous heart, and he's going to give it all he has. Now, hopefully the shot is falling. But, again, if you're the opposing team and you cause havoc and make it tough on him, and you throw 2 and 3 guys at him, and these other guys can't step up like they did in last game and make shots. So these other guys, like Joe Harris and Bruce Brown and all these other guys, they're going to have to give KD some help. Now, what James Harden is going to be able to do, James Harden is their point guard. So that's going to allow Kevin Durant to play off the ball even more. And then you have a guy like James Harden who you're going to have to respect
But can
his
he run
driving
the point
ability.
as good as he needs to, or can he run the point as good as he might need to
Well,
for
we'll see how
KD to
healthy he
be
is.
able to be the one to play off the ball.
Well, we'll see how healthy
Because we already
he is
know they're going to hide him on
because
defense,
you don't,
and
right?
how they're
Because
going to do that is what I'm really interested about too. Like,
Well,
how
we'll
are you
see.
going to hide Harden? Because if
Well,
I'm the
if
Bucks,
you're Milwaukee, you go at it.
I'm running pick and roll on Harden
All
every
day.
chance I get. I'm making him
All
try
day.
to make quick movements around screens,
Absolutely.
and hopefully he re-aggravates. Hopefully for them, not for me.
Yeah, right,
Hopefully he
right.
re-aggravates that injury.
And I agree. That's what they should do. They should definitely go at him and make him play some defense. But if he's feeling good and he's warmed up and he's not thinking about his hamstring, if he gets going and he runs up and down the court and makes sudden movements a few times and he says to himself, "Oh, you know what? I'm good," and he really doesn't think about that hamstring the remainder of the game, then what you have to respect his penetrating ability to the basket, him being able to find open shooters once he does that, his ability to get to the foul line and live at the foul line and muck up the game that way. You know he embellishes contact better than anyone. So he can live at the foul line. He can generate points like that, and then he can knock down the three. So he's a tremendous scorer. He's a top 5, top 10 talent in this league, former MVP. So having him back in the fold bodes well for the Nets tonight. So we'll see what happens. Now, if they ultimately win this series, or whoever wins this series, who do you think they're going to play out of the Hawks, who tied it up? I told you last week, back that bandwagon up and let me jump on.
I told you
to
where
the
I'm
Hawks
at.
bandwagon. Huh?
I told you where I'm riding. I'm riding with the Hawks, man, and I'm riding with Trae Young. I think he's the best player on the court.
That's what I like.
I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Well, there's a doubt about it if Embiid is healthy.
Well, absolutely, but still, in my opinion, I'm gonna go with Trae Young all day.
I like Trae.
I mean, Embiid, his size and overall athletic ability, whenever he's 100%, yeah, he's really nice to have. Still, I'm not a believer. I've never been a believer in the 76ers. I've never been a believer in that roster. And if Daryl Morey thinks he's just going to walk over there and cakewalk his ass to an NBA championship, I don't think it's going to happen. Well, and the Hawks they're that kind of team where they're almost a team that people will sleep on. Well, other teams will sleep on until all of a sudden you find yourself in a dogfight with them and they got their jaws on your throat. And then what are you going to do? You know,
well, you know what?
They may find themselves, they being the 76ers, they don't win this game, they're going to find themselves with their throat in the jaws of Trae Young and the Hawks, and I fully expect them to put them away after that.
Well, it's tough. You know what? Joel Embiid is not healthy. And if you look at that game last night, the Sixers had an 18-point lead. 18-point lead. And what you've done now by allowing the Hawks to come back and take that game, I mean, they had tremendous energy. I mean, Trae Young has shooters around him, and he's getting what he wants. He's getting to the basket. He's getting inside the lane, dishing it out. I mean, he knows where all his players are on the floor, and they know all they have to do is find the open spot. He's going to find them and get them the ball. So this guy, and he didn't shoot particularly well last night. I think he was like 8 for 26. But now you've given them some confidence, and they feel like they can win. And you look at the guy, I mean, you look at guys like Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons on the 76ers. See, his inability to create offense for himself for the most part. I mean, he's not driving to the basket outside the paint. Yeah. And a lot of times he's dishing off passes that he probably should keep and try to take the onus upon himself. Like last night, when you see Joel Embiid, who went 0 for 12 in the second half, and obviously that knee is bothering him, but it affected him on the defensive side as well because he couldn't have the impact that he wanted on the defensive side as well. But when you see guys like Joel Embiid struggling like that, if you're Ben Simmons and you're the point guard, Ben Simmons had 3 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists in the second half. I mean in the second half.
That's inexcusable.
So that's inexcusable for a point guard. You need to be able to either control the tempo of the game by making sure Joel Embiid does not go 0 for 12, and because Joel Embiid took the onus upon himself and he got out of the floor of the offense. And that's Doc Rivers' fault too. You have to rein him back in, even though he's the ultimate reason that you are where you are, guy that finished second in the MVP race. When you see him in the second half just taking ill-advised shots and just going 0 for 12, you have to be, as a coach and a point guard, you have to be able to rein that guy in. Either you're going to get him an easy look to get him going, or you're going to have to get in pick and roll and get yourself easy baskets or get someone rolling to the basket. But you're going to have to find a way to generate some offense, and you're going to have to find a way to start controlling the tempo of the game as a point guard, and don't let your 7-foot center dictate the tempo of the game. He shouldn't be out there just taking all those shots. As a point guard, you should be able to either go up there and talk to him, rein him in, or with your play, be able to dictate the way the game is being run and the fluidity of the game. But him not being a guy that's going to shoot the basketball, he doesn't have confidence in himself for that. No confidence in himself. Can't shoot free throws. So a lot of times when he has a chance to take the ball to the basket, he takes a couple dribbles and then he passes to a guy that he knows is not going to make the shot. And then you had, just like Ben Simmons last night, like I'm speaking of, you see you have Seth Curry who's cooking. You keep him high. You keep feeding the ball to him in the second half. But I put a lot of that on Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers last night for not controlling the flow of that game in the second half, reining Joel Embiid back in, and doing what worked for them in the first half. So now you have a Hawks team who have some great young talent on that team. I mean, now you have a Hawks team that's confident. It's tied up 2-2, and they feel that their chances is just as good as their opponents, and they do not fear the 76ers one bit. And then you have a hobbled Joel Embiid. He's admittedly said that he's not going to be healthy until the season is over. So he's playing at probably, 70% right now. So they're going to continue to go at him and really test that knee. So I just think the Atlanta Hawks right now, they're playing at a high level. The power forward that they have,
Collins
is legit. I mean, this guy can knock down the three. He can rebound for you. I mean, John Collins can play some ball, man. I like him a lot.
I'm big time high on Atlanta. I think they've got a legitimate chance to go to the finals, and I think they're going to get beyond the 76ers. I'm glad that you brought up Doc Rivers because I think it's important to mention this is a guy.
And the Hawks didn't even play good last night.
This is a guy.
They shot 12 or 40 from three.
Right.
So they're going to get
That is
hot.
correct. Doc Rivers is a guy who has seen some big leads and sure wins in the playoffs evaporate right before his eyes. I mean, we've seen it in two different series with the Houston Rockets. You know, back when they let Josh Smith go for what he scored like 20 points in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned about Joel Embiid kind of going rogue, kind of getting out of the offense, doing his own thing. Doc Rivers has been known, or we've seen in other instances, to let these stars get a little too far outside the offense, and by the time he decides to reel them back in, it's too little too late.
I agree.
And they're either down and out in that contest or down and out in the series.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't let Doc off the hook. While he's a very good coach, and great coach, Hall of Famer, all right, you cannot let him off the hook for allowing these types of things to happen in some of the biggest games he's ever coached in.
Well, you remember last year, and even though I'm a Doc Rivers fan, you remember when I kept saying I question a lot of his strategic decisions. And case in point, last night, I mean, even when he was with the Clippers last year in the bubble, and which they had an early exit, I question a lot of his lack of decisions. I question a lot of his strategic moves and strategic decisions, as great a coach as he is. And case in point, last night, the same way. Now, speaking of the Clippers, they were able to handle the Jazz last night. Now, the Clippers, they're back in it. The first series, they went down 2 games. Now, this series, they went down 2 games. Were able to come back and tie it up. Granted, albeit Mike Conley being out for the Jazz really hurts their case. It really hurts their chances tremendously because.
But you know what? Injuries are part of the game, and everybody's dealing with them right now. I will say that.
And
across the board,
a month ago?
everybody's dealing with it, from teams that have just exited the playoffs to the teams that are still in it. They've all got injury issues.
They do. But the thing about it is, he hinders their chances tremendously because he orchestrates that offense. A savvy veteran leader. He can knock down the shot. He can get to the basket. Keeps those guys, really keeps them mentally focused, make sure their composure is right. So that's a big-time loss for them not having Mike Conley. But I'm not going to say that the Clippers probably wouldn't have made this comeback even if Mike Conley would have been in there. Because what I've seen with the Clippers is they've turned it up on the defensive side of the ball. if you look at what they're doing, you look at what they did to Donovan Mitchell last night. I mean, it wasn't until the second half when Bogdanovich and what's your boy name? Ingles. Ingles really hit some of those threes, but they were already down 20, or they were already pretty much out of it by then. But the Clippers came out immediately in that first half, and they said, Donovan Mitchell is not going to beat us. They cut off the driving lanes where he wasn't able to get in there and just have all those kickouts to his teammates, and so they really couldn't get into a rhythm. And so by the time they finally started knocking down some shots, they didn't have that rhythm, and the game was pretty much out of reach. But the Clippers have turned it up on defense. Paul George had 31 last night. Kawhi had 31. We'll see what happens with that knee. But the Clippers have too much talent, and I think the Clippers are going to ultimately win that series. I really do. I mean, I like the way Paul George is playing, but when you have two tremendous defenders, wing defenders, and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George playing at a high level, and hopefully Playoff P can change that narrative about him in the playoffs, which if you really look at some of his playoff performances, they haven't been as bad as a lot of people make them out to be. Now, granted, he's come up small in a lot of instances, but he's had some steady numbers if you really go back and look at his numbers. But he's supposed to be that second superstar to Kawhi, and right now he's being that. I mean, the main thing Paul George has to do, for one, he has to continue to play defense, but he has to continue to be aggressive on the offensive end. You know Kawhi's going to do his thing. He's a guy that's a champion, two-time Finals MVP, 2 championship rings to his credit, and you know Kawhi is going to bring it. Now you have both of those guys engaged, bringing it on the offensive end, and Morris, all these guys around them are feeding off their energy, and they're turning up their intensity on the defense side of the ball. If the Clippers can continue to play defense like this and continue to pay attention to Donovan Mitchell is going to get his. But you make it tough on him. You close off those driving lanes as much as possible where he can't get in there and do his thing and get to the lane and get to the hole and all this and that. But you really, really, really make it tough on them on the defensive end. And I think the Clippers are going to ultimately advance.
You know what? It's hard to say because I will say this. The Clippers have shown that, they don't like playing in Utah. And I think it's an uncomfortable environment for them. They lost 2 in a row there in Utah. Here they are. They come home. They win 2. Now it's going to be 1-1-1. So I'm really curious to see how they come out and perform in Game 5. Now, you mentioned playoff P. I think getting Paul George involved in running the offense is the best thing that they could have done. I think it really gets him going a lot better knowing that he's in charge of distributing the basketball or getting to the hole. And it also helps Kawhi Leonard out a lot, too, because he doesn't have to do that as much as he has in the past, or as we saw him do it with Toronto whenever they won the championship. This whole thing revolves around Paul George and his ability to perform. I think all the role players are solid for the Clippers. They're getting shooting from their guys off the bench. They're getting defense from guys like Beverly. But can Paul George perform at a high level? And if he does, they're going to win the game, it seems like. However, we'll see what happens when they go back to Utah.
Yeah, because Rudy Gobert has to be more
I
involved,
think
too.
this is going to go 7 games. I think they probably drop the next
7,
one in Utah, and then at Utah in Game 7,
it'll be tough for them to win a Game 7.
I give them the edge, Greg, and I do because I think that's where you'll see Kawhi Leonard have his best game because when his back is against the wall, seemingly every time we see him come out and have his best game almost we've ever seen. I think about the game-winning shot against the Sixers when he was in Toronto to turn the tide and win that series. It was unbelievable. That's what you're going to get from Kawhi Leonard if he's put in that opportunity. So the Jazz really need to try to do everything they can to close this thing out in 6, as hard as that may be, being shorthanded as they are, because Kawhi Leonard in a winner-take-all scenario, I still have to lean his way.
Right. And what the Jazz also have to do, they have to get Rudy Gobert more involved. Maybe get him rolling to the basket more and get him some looks at the basket. But they get him more involved on the offensive end as well. You can utilize him in some situations to really offset some of that suffocating pressure that the Clippers are throwing on them.
Indeed.
So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to roll with the Clippers again. But it will be tough in a Game 7 in Utah.
And there's one thing to note, Greg, is that the
playing at that high altitude like that.
The Utah Jazz, they've got a little more experience in the team that they just faced and put away in a tough series in the Dallas Mavericks. So that is another thing that you need to take into consideration is that Utah is going to be a much tougher out in that Game 7, or any of the games leading up to it. Being that they do have more veteran stewardship than the Dallas Mavericks did.
Well, you know what, too? And see, that's my point about home court advantage. And last year when they were playing in the bubble, I came on here and said a number of times, like, hey, the best team is going to win. All things are equal, yada, yada, yada. But my point being, here is where you see when you have to go on the road against a hostile environment, just like when you go to Phoenix or something like that. Teams in the bubble didn't have to do that. Now, granted, the Lakers had LeBron James and Anthony Davis, so they were probably the better team anyway. But that's my point right there about the difference in this year and last year when everybody was just in the bubble. Now you have to go do it on the road in a hostile environment, and your back is up against the wall. So it is different. It is different. So no asterisk on the Lakers. Of course, I'm a Lakers fan. No asterisk on the Lakers in the bubble or anything like that because they have LeBron James, the best player in the game. But the fact of the matter is, and he's done it in some tough situations, but the fact of the matter is that's the difference between this year and last year. You have to go on the road and deal with some of these hostile crowds, and your role players might not step up like they would have done in the bubble.
And the
last
travel.
year.
The travel takes a toll on your body and all that,
Right.
And I think that's why, Greg, you're seeing a lot of these teams have the injury issues that they're having, and it's more so at the top of their lineups than it is in just the role players or the fill-in guys on the back end of the roster. We're seeing big names go down with injuries, and a lot of it has to do with the quick turnaround in the season, and now you add travel back into the mix on a season that is now much longer than what they had last season, and now you're seeing guys, seemingly drop like flies. But one guy who overcame injury and has now bounced back, and his team is on the cusp of making their way to an NBA Finals. They're in the conference finals. First team there, the Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul has them just cooking as they make mincemeat out of the Nuggets in a sweep where the Nuggets, despite a little bit, I'd say maybe in Game 3 and at some points in Game 4, they were not on the same level as the Suns at all.
Yeah.
And I know they're missing Jamal Murray, but even with Murray, I think they still would have been made into mincemeat by Chris Paul and the Suns. They are clicking. They're playing the best basketball they played all season long. They're doing it right now. We talk about there's always one team every year that in the playoffs all of a sudden turns it on, and then it opens your eyes. You're like, that's why they got this guy. That's why Chris Paul is in Phoenix. And to me, Phoenix is the most dangerous team still alive right now.
I said that Hawks bandwagon. Now, I want to roll with Phoenix in the West. Even if the Clippers or the Jazz, I'm not a Clippers fan. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a Clippers fan at all. And I don't care if the Clippers win it all or not. But I want to see Chris Paul get a championship, at least have that opportunity to get a championship ring. So I want Chris Paul to come out of the West. I really do. I'm saying that right here, right now. And I like Monty Williams. If you look at what he's been through, and he's credited Chris Paul for being there, even when his wife tragically got killed in a car crash last year, I think it was, or the year before that. But God rest her soul. But to see the job that Monty Williams has done with this team, and before the playoffs started, I knew Phoenix was a juggernaut, and I knew Chris Paul, with his playoff experience, was going to be able to do his thing. The reason I had some trepidation about them making it this far, this deep into the playoffs, especially the conference finals, because I ultimately thought LeBron and those guys, but they ended up limping into the playoffs, and you see what happened with them. But I just didn't think Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and all these young guys, as much of an influence as Chris Paul has been to these guys, I really didn't see him being able to get them over the hump in the playoffs. Not saying that they wouldn't win a series, but they look like the favorites to come out of the West, period, right now. Unless you throw the Clippers in there. I can see that being a tough matchup for them. Or Utah, of course. Utah is first in the West and with Donovan Mitchell and those guys. So it's going to be a tough battle for anybody in the West to get out of that Western Conference. But Phoenix, the job that Monty Williams is doing, Chris Paul does not look like he's 36 years old right now. He looks healthy. He looks spry. He looks happy. DeAndre Ayton is giving them that presence in the middle. And Booker is electrifying. This guy's a potent scorer. And so they pretty much have a big three right now. make no mistake about it, they have a big three in DeAndre Ayton, who was the first pick in the draft, 2015 or 16, I think it was. Devin Booker and Chris Paul. That's a big three. And then and then you have those other players coming out, and Monty Williams has these guys focused. They're disciplined to go along with the Chris Paul tutelage and help. I mean, I like what Phoenix is doing as well. And those guys can play a few different styles. They keep you at bay. They keep you on your heels with their offensive creativity. I mean, Chris Paul is getting into the teeth of the defense. He's hitting that little jumper from around the free throw line. He's doing fancy drill. I mean, the guy is special, man. He's one of the top 5 point guards of all time.
Oh, without a doubt. I think it's important to
and
take.
I don't think Kyrie is. I was going to say that about Kyrie.
I mean, not even close.
I don't think Kyrie, in my opinion, is a tad great player, but he's no AI. No. But go ahead, though.
No, I think it's important that we take note of the way that this team is built. And when you look at, you talk about their big three, if you look at the diversity and the hierarchy of the big three that they have, I don't think there's any doubt the order of that hierarchy. And I think they're the only team left in this tournament that have that. Chris Paul sits at top, and there's nobody that challenges him. It's not, oh, Chris Paul today and tomorrow it's Kevin Booker. No, Chris Paul is the number one sole leader of that basketball team. I think when you compare them to the Brooklyn Nets, you'll see that Brooklyn switches back and forth, depending whether it be because of injury or what. They switch back and forth between who is the primary leader on their team, whether it's KD, Kyrie, or James Harden. Where if you look at the Phoenix Suns, there is a structured hierarchy. Everybody knows where they fit in. They all follow Chris, and they've got the right mix of young talent and old veteran stewardship. Jay Crowder, a guy that's played a lot of meaningful games.
Defensive presence.
They've got the right mix of guys, the right mix of veterans. That's very important, too, because you could have all the talent in the world, but if you got guys competing for who the top dog is, then that's going to be detrimental to your success. And that's one thing that the Phoenix Suns have zero of whatsoever on their team. And I know a lot of people, and I'm going to swing this back home to the Rockets. I'm going to pull a Greg. Like, he does this with the Cowboys. I'm going to bring it home to the Rockets. A lot of people say that the Rockets should have stuck with Chris Paul and James Harden and made another run at it. You're absolutely right. That's probably would have been their best chance to win a championship. But they never would have, and it's not because of Chris Paul, but it's because of what I just spoke about with that hierarchy. There was always going to be a challenge of Chris from James on whose team is this, who's the number one guy, who's the guy who's going to get the shot, who's going to make the decision, and there was always going to be that little wedge in between those two guys, and they were never going to be able to get as high or as far as they would be if they would just fall in line. Now I think you see James falling in line a little bit more in Brooklyn.
He is.
But if you look at where Chris is at, I think it worked out perfectly for him. He landed in the perfect spot, and it was an opportunity for him to show everybody else that it wasn't his fault that the Rockets didn't become a championship basketball team.
Right. And you know, when Chris was with the Rockets, I was questioning whether or not he was on his way down. I mean, like if he was just declining that much. But at the same time,
it's just the injuries. That's what makes it. They leave a bad taste in your mouth, especially when they happen at the end of the season.
Right. That plus the fact that his usage rate wasn't the same because he couldn't steer the offense. He wasn't the guy, to your point, controlling the offense. Most of the time, it was James Harden. And so Chris Paul really couldn't have the effect on the game and his teammates as that true point guard and that leader that he did at all his other stops. Now when he gets to Phoenix, obviously when he's gotten to Phoenix, and of course at Oklahoma City, you saw when he was at Oklahoma City last year, you saw the imprint he put on that young team as well because he was able to run the show. He was able to put his imprint on those young guys in the locker room, off the court, and on the court because he was the leader of the team and he was the guy that was steering the ship. And that's what you're seeing right now with Phoenix. He's the guy, and again, he's healthy. I mean, I think that shoulder looks mighty fine right now. He's healthy. He's feeling good. He's happy. And it says a lot about these guys' attitude, the way they're playing. It says a lot about Monty Williams because you can tell that these guys will run through a brick wall for him.
Yeah,
they will run through a brick wall for him. So they love playing for their coach. This guy, he obviously treats those guys like men. He treats them well. And he puts them in the right mindset. He understands the psyche of these guys, and he understands which buttons to push and when not to push certain buttons, and how to coach and who to coach and how to coach. And you can tell Monty Williams is a guy that understands these guys. He understands their psyche, and he's letting a veteran guy like Chris Paul, who's going to be a future Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer, he's delegating some of that responsibility to Chris Paul and letting him help him in that regard. And so I just think he's doing a great job as a coach, the way he's doing things, the way the decisions he's making, the way he's monitoring things, the way he's disciplining these guys, he's holding these guys accountable. But at the same time, he's letting these guys, he's giving these guys room to grow. He's instilling confidence in these guys. I mean, if you look at DeAndre Ayton, I mean, this guy's taking leaps and bounds. And it's not only because of Chris Paul's arrival, it's Monty Williams in his ear as well. I mean, so these guys love playing for Monty Williams. And I'm very impressed with what Phoenix is doing. And again, you have a guy like Devin Booker who can go for 40 or 50 on any given night. And Chris Paul, I mean, he's wrecking shop right now, man. I just love what Phoenix is doing right now.
It's hard not to look at them as a favorite. They will wait the challenger, whether it be the Clippers or the Jazz, and then we'll get to see this story unfold right before our eyes. But it was a treat to see. Now, let me ask you, did you see the hard foul Nikola Jokic had on Cameron Payne that actually got him ejected from Game 4?
Yeah.
I think it was in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And if they weren't dead already, I think it was evident there that they were done as soon as he was out of the game.
That was a frustration foul. That was okay.
Do you agree with the flagrant too? Because I know that's probably the most debated point.
I don't.
I do.
Okay.
Tell me why you don't, and then I'll tell you why I do.
Because first of all, let me say this: I thought if they would have had Jamal Murray, that would have made. I still think Phoenix, the way Phoenix is playing, they would have ultimately won the series. But with Jamal Murray, I think it would have gotten a lot more interesting because I just think with his scoring punch and scoring prowess, I just think it would have opened up some things for Jokic more.
Yeah, no doubt. I
and
think
of course,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
he's one of the best players in the league. So.
Yeah, but that particular foul right there, I just think in that situation, his aim was the basketball.
Yeah,
I think him
agree.
hitting his face was actually an accident. Now, of
It
course,
was.
a lot of these calls get called even if they're accidents. But I think he was trying to make a hard play on the basketball, and it got him in the nose. But him being an MVP, being a superstar, I just think he should have garnered the respect to at least stay in that game. These guys are already down 3-0.
I mean, even in that game, I mean, you have to really, as the officials, see a clear cut, no doubt about it, flagrant too, and I think they did. And here's the reason why.
Okay.
When you look at it in slow motion, Payne took the inner part of the elbow from Jokic right to the nose. And had that happened on just him reaching in or trying to get the basketball, I don't think it's a flagrant 2 foul. But the windup, if you see the windup that the Joker, he came all the way up that high and he's swinging down as hard as he can. Don't forget how big this guy is. And I don't know if you saw the video that I saw. It was posted of the people who were sitting behind Jokic's brother. The whole time that altercation between him and Devin Booker was going on, you could hear the other Jokic brother just cussing in another language, all going off. And the guy is, I mean, he's fit. The guy looks big. I mean, I think the Rockets should call his agent right now and see if he wants to come join up and try to take his shot in the NBA. The guy looks like he'd be a guy I wouldn't want to fight in a dark alley somewhere. The dude's big, but I couldn't agree more with the officials. If you're going to wind up that hard and swing that hard, you better not hit another player in the face because you could easily break his nose. You could easily break a bone in the face. You could end that player's season on that. If you're going to swing that hard, don't hit him in the face. If he hits him anywhere else, I think it's just a common foul. But if you hit a guy in the nose and clearly he hit him hard, I don't think there was any acting coming from Cameron Payne when he was laying on the court. He knocked the fire out of that guy, and I think the call was spot on, right on the button. And it sucks that it had to come in a Game 4 where your back's against the wall and you're facing elimination. But it was a bad job by Jokic in letting his frustrations get the best of him.
Well, what I do like the fact that Jokic came over and apologized to him before he
that was tremendous sportsmanship by Nikola Jokic.
Yes.
And that intels or gets at the fact that he wasn't trying to hurt the guy.
That's what I was just
but
about
he
to
was
say.
frustrated and he was careless, and it cost him.
Right.
It cost him the rest of his season.
Right. But I love the fact he came and tell, hey man, that's my bad. And I like the fact that that Cameron Payne was receptive of it as well. And so I like the way that ended. But that was definitely a frustration foul. But you want to talk some NFL?
Absolutely, we're gonna transition and segue into football first before we get into the NFL. The college football playoff is having a meeting.
Okay.
All right, and this meeting's going to discuss how many teams they're going to allow in the college football playoff, and we're looking at a possible expansion all the way to 12 teams and an entire overhaul of the format with conference champions getting an automatic bid into the college football playoffs and then some other at-large bids as well. Greg, first thoughts initially, like it or hate it?
I like it a lot. I mean, because essentially that's a possible lottery ticket or a lottery win for more teams. And it makes the season, I mean, because if you're not Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, or one of these teams, sometimes you go into the season feeling that you have no chance at a national championship if you're not in one of these major conferences. But what it does, it gives a lot of other teams, a lot of other players a chance to fulfill their goals and their dreams. And so I like it a lot.
Me too, man. I think the more the merrier. You add these teams, you end the debate. I mean, who was it that we talked about? Central Florida over the years. You know, they declared themselves national champions after what was it, a 15-0 season or a 14-0 season, which we all know they weren't national champions. But now in this new format, they would get the opportunity
to prove their worth.
They'd get a shot at it, and you're going to see some of these teams prevail. It won't be as often as maybe you might see in the NBA, the NCAA tournament, basketball version of it.
Yeah.
But it's going to up the excitement. It's gonna up the viewership. There's gonna be more teams and people who follow certain teams. Like, you know, A&M has a huge following in this town. And, you know, they probably would have made the college football playoff if there would have been 12 teams.
Right.
And there, you know, and that just
or even 8.
And then you've got all of Texas, you know, sitting there ready, chomping at the bit for the college football playoff, waiting for their team to get an opportunity to knock off Alabama once again. I'm getting excited just thinking about it. I think you may even could go a step further and go to 16 and just allow every conference champion across the board to get in.
That's been thrown around.
You know who is not going to like this and is going to vehemently oppose this rule?
Who?
Notre Dame. Because
they're independent.
Because they're independent, they can only get an at-large bid. They can't get one of them top bids for that are reserved only for conference championship. Or how about this, Greg? If they do change this rule, could we rapidly then see immediate college football realignment where Notre Dame joins up a conference somewhere and all of a sudden all these teams, the Houstons of the world, the Temples of the world, they start getting the Boise States, they start getting plucked up and added to these conferences, these major conferences, and then we end up with what they used to talk about, you know, the 5 power mega conferences, and that's it. You know, no more small max and wax and all that stuff. Although, you know, those are good conferences, good organizations. I just think this rule change may lead to a vast overhaul of the entire landscape of college football.
Well, you know what? I think even if some of those small conferences, I think if you're the champion, I think it gives them a better chance of even getting in as well. And the thing about it, because I don't think they're just going to take the Power 5 right now and just these major conferences. I think what it's supposed to include a lot of these other small conferences,
right?
Like the MAC and all this and that. So it gives them a better chance. And obviously they said that if it does go down, now I think it says that the College Football Management Committee will discuss this matter on June 17th and 18th, and the formal recommendation will be expected to be made to the College Football Playoff Board of Managers. So, I mean, it just gives more teams a chance, and the earliest they're saying that it could probably jump off is 2023. Of course, ESPN is going to be there. They're going to have to configure some things and change some things if that's the case, because they're under contract with the NCAA until 2025. So it's some wiggling and some wheeling and dealing that's going to have to go down. But let me read a couple of these. Okay, the 12-team proposal calls for the 6 highest-ranked conference champions to make the college football field, with 6 at-large spots going to the highest-ranked remaining teams, as determined by the College Football Selection Committee. I mean, there's a lot more I can read right here.
Right, but just that right there, you know, that statement right there tells me that we're going to get into these selections whenever, if this rule does get implemented, we're going to get into these selections and we're going to see these teams in the smaller conferences still get snubbed for a 2-loss Florida, a 2-loss A&M, a 2-loss USC. We're going to see that time and time again, and that's going to get these other schools to want to go ahead and just join these big conferences that other teams think that they can't compete with, and let them show them that they can.
Right. Now, you know what? And I don't know. It was something else I saw earlier in there where I don't know exactly the details and the proposal, the entire proposal, which, I mean, it's right here, but I'm not going to read all of it right there.
Right.
But I wonder if they're going to, just say, like, if you're ranked in the top 12, if you're ranked in the top 12 at the time when they make the decisions, no matter what conference you're in, of course, if you're a conference champion, you're probably going to be in the top 12 anyway.
Nope.
But if you're ranked in the top 12, will you automatically be invited?
And the answer is no. It's no.
Okay.
It's no, because you're going to see them take into account other aspects of the season than maybe the voters or the AP pollsters take into account.
Okay.
And especially if, like you mentioned earlier, if they are looking to maybe give these teams, these smaller schools that are having these good seasons, these Boise States of the world, if they're looking to give them an opportunity, maybe one or two or more of these spots are reserved for teams like that, then maybe. But I don't know, man.
I mean, it remains to be seen what kind of deal they're going to make,
because I
think it's something that
I
has
think
to be
we're
done.
always going to see people are going to give the nod to a Florida who only lost to, Alabama and Notre Dame or whatever,
Right.
and so I think it's been a long time coming
Well, the Blue Bloods are definitely going to get
that
the
some of
first
these
pick
conferences need to expand. I think about the Big 12. I feel like they may like their little honey hole because UT generates a lot of money. Baylor generates a lot of money. They've got a smaller conference, but they're still making good money with their networks and with the success that their teams have had, particularly Baylor, in the NCAA tournament. But I feel like they're falling by the wayside, and they're falling behind these other conferences, and as it pertains to football, because they don't have a national champion. A conference champion game. And then think about all the interest it would drum up in your conference if all of a sudden you added a team like the Houston Cougars, or the Rice Owls. I mean, and you give more money and more resources to these smaller schools, and then all of a sudden the Big 12 can be looked at as one of the power. It is a Power 5 conference, but I don't feel like there's been any power teams really coming out of the Big 12 ever since A&M and Missouri bolted for the SEC.
Right, and they don't play defense. But I agree, and that's one thing. That's one of the things that I've actually been surprised about that conference for the last few years, that they haven't been more willing to have a conference championship for those reasons that you just stated right there. I mean, because they've gotten left out a number of times because of the simple fact they didn't win their conference and things like that. So you would think not only for the money, well, that's the main thing it boils down to, for the money, but you want to give these guys a chance to play for a conference championship and better their chances of getting into the college football playoffs. So I'm still surprised that they haven't done that yet. Maybe that's something that the Big 12 will consider, but the Big 12.
Well, I think they're going to have to, because they're going to get left behind. Because some of these other conferences, they're with the times. They're going to try to add to their conference, realizing that these teams, these schools are going to look for conferences to join. So why keep your doors closed? There's enough money to go around. If they get this right, the popularity of this entire tournament is going to be huge.
Yeah,
I mean it's going to be ginormous.
Right. And then the stigma that the Big 12 has, I mean, you already don't have a conference championship, and then they say there's no defense being played in the Big 12. So when these guys in the committee start looking at the Big 12, when they replay the Big 12, no matter who has the best record in the Big 12, when they start looking at some of these games that they've won or that they've lost, they see games in the 50s, 58 to 52, 50-something to 40-something. I mean, it's like, how can that team be one of the best teams in the country and they're giving up 40-some points a game? So you have that working against the Big 12 as well. So that doesn't bode well for them. But a conference championship would definitely enhance their chances and make them a more viable contender for a playoff spot.
Absolutely. You heard it right here on the Sports Court. We'd like to see as many teams as we can get in that tournament, and particularly the hometown Houston Cougars. I'd like to see them get a shot at knocking off a major Power 5 conference team, especially some of the squads we've seen them put together over the past several years.
Eddie, hey man, you know what? I know we're about to transition to football, but you know something?
Or the NFL.
I mean, to the NFL. I'm sorry. You know something that's always kind of bugged me, and I always wanted, and I always wondered. I always wonder why. And this is way off topic and way off base, but why didn't the Detroit Lions? And you probably don't remember. You remember Billy Sims?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm still surprised that Billy Sims didn't get his number retired by the Detroit Lions. He only played a short span with the Detroit Lions, but was great. How did they give Barry Sanders his number 20 when Barry Sanders, of course, Barry Sanders, we all know about Barry Sanders. But I've always wondered that. I'm like, Barry Sanders wore number 21 at Oklahoma State. Why, when he went to Detroit, then the Detroit Lions, why did the Detroit Lions give him Billy Sims' number instead of giving Barry Sanders number 21? Billy Sims' number was supposed to be retired in Detroit.
Because they sucked, and Barry Sanders was going to be the best thing that ever happened to them.
About that. Yeah, but I'm like,
they weren't telling Barry nothing. He could do whatever the hell he wanted.
Billy Sims' number should have been retired with the Detroit Lions. Hey, man, but go ahead. What do you think about the Texans canceling minicamp? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought this was one of the most bizarre things or bizarre stories to come out of Texans training camp, maybe ever. It doesn't make any sense to me why a team going through so much transition would cancel any practices, much less an entire camp, an entire mandatory mini camp. This tells me, really, when I'm looking at this, man, I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the organization behind the scenes, still being powered by this team and trying to figure out what they want to do with Deshaun Watson. I think that canceling minicamp actually let the Texans and Watson off the hook for making a decision on whether or not they were going to tell him to stay home. He was going to decide to stay home, and whether or not they were going to have to fine him, which, according to the league collective bargaining agreement, they were going to have to do that. But what this also tells me is the Texans still aren't sure what they want to do with Deshaun Watson. They don't want to come out and tell Deshaun Watson to stay away, because what if all of a sudden he has a change of heart and decides that he's okay with playing for the Texans when all this blows over? They don't want to be the first one to say, hey, stay away. And Deshaun, even though he hasn't showed up, he hasn't yet been forced to choose to skip a mandatory practice or a mandatory event. So by not putting the pressure on him to do that, they are essentially extending their window on how long they can make a decision on Deshaun Watson. And it doesn't surprise me one bit, Greg, because when you have a quarterback like this, we've talked about it in the past two shows when we addressed Aaron Rodgers and the situation in Green Bay. It is so hard to pull the trigger and trade a generational talent like Deshaun Watson and Nick Caserio. I'm seeing that the guy knows what he's doing. He hasn't made his mind up. I don't care what anybody says, even John McClain. They have not made their mind up whether or not they're going to trade Deshaun Watson, and they really hope in the back of their minds that they don't have to.
Right. But I mean, because the guy is a franchise, he's one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL.
You never win when you trade one of those guys. When's the last time you've seen a guy
already traded
at the top of his game get traded, and you think, man, the team that didn't get him or the team that got rid of him really got the better deal?
Yeah.
You never
but
see
you know
that.
What, Eddie, that's the first thing I thought about as well when they canceled minicamp was the fact that they're just going to continue to vet the Deshaun Watson situation, and they really, really want to see things play out with that. Like you said, not finding him and keeping things where they are right now. They haven't traded him yet. I think they're just taking a wait-and-see approach. They're trying to see what's going to go on with the civil cases with him, and they're trying to see if Roger Goodell is going to suspend him for 4 games, 8 games, 10 games. So they're just sitting back right now, letting things play out. Hopefully, as far as the Texans are concerned, I'm sure they're hoping things get resolved more sooner than later, because they're trying to make a decision, because training camp is coming up next month. So I know they're thinking like, okay, what's going to go on? Is he going to be put on the exempt list? I mean, what is Roger Goodell going to do? I mean, what's going to happen? So, because I agree with you, they don't want Deshaun Watson to go anywhere. I mean, they've already lost some of their mates, J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, who else? I can go on and on. I mean, Who else have they lost? Jadeveon Clowney.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the number one
Dwayne
pick.
Brown.
Dwayne Brown. I mean, so they want to try to save face in some regard and keep their franchise quarterback. So they're just taking a wait and see approach. But they cancel camp. But there's a lot of teams that did not cancel camp. And you know who I heard was in tremendous shape? Got a comment on there?
Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Dick Johnson, a guy I work with, catches the show every chance he gets. Old Dick, man.
That's what's up. So, hey, they say Zeke is in great shape. You remember you posed a question?
Here we go. Yeah.
You remember you posed a question? Dak Prescott says Zeke is in the best shape of his life. Zeke is ready. The Cowboys are ready. But I don't want to talk about the Cowboys right now. I want to talk about the Ravens. What do you think? The Ravens, they drafted some players, receivers. They bolstered the receiving core. Is it time for J.K. Dobbins to take off and really help? Because you heard me say it last year. I think this season is going to be J.K. Dobbins' breakout year, and he's really going to be their featured back. And the Ravens, along with some of those weapons that Lamar Jackson has at his disposal now, hopefully he's working around the clock to perfect his passing skills and working on that base and his accuracy and things like that. We know he's a tremendous talent, a tremendous player. But now they can lean on J.K. Dobbins more. I think J.K. Dobbins is going to be special this year.
Hey, without a doubt, is it time? You bet your ass it's time. It's time for J.K. to take the lead role in that backfield and run with it. We saw it took a lot longer than I think a lot of us thought it was going to. If you were like me, you had J.K. Dobbins stashed on your bench in your fantasy league, just waiting for the day he was going to break out. And it seemed like they waited all the way to the end of the season to really start giving him the lion's share of the carries.
Get him the damn ball.
Mark Ingram is no longer a part of this offense. As you know, following this show, and if you follow football, he is now a Houston Texan. Mm-hmm. So J.K. Dobbins sits atop the depth chart, and they're going to need him to do the things that Mark Ingram did really well, which was performing well on third down, catching the football out of the backfield, and then being a good in-between-the-tackles runner. He's fully capable of doing all those things. I think where they need him the most is going to be in that pass protection. I know that Lamar Jackson can escape a rush and make some things happen with his legs, but we know from watching this Baltimore team year in and year out since they drafted Lamar that they need to make some more things happen from the pocket. They need to make some more things happen in the passing game if they're going to get over the hump and be able to challenge a team like the Kansas City Chiefs if they want to come out of the AFC. And to do so, they're going to need J.K. Dobbins to perform well on third down, whether they're giving him the football on a swing route in the flats or they're having him block a blitzing linebacker or somebody free off the edge. If he learns to do that, and if Lamar Jackson doesn't have to worry about that, if he has full confidence in J.K. in that spot, then that's going to help him be his best and be able to make the reads he needs to make for that team to have some success.
Agreed. And what J.K. Dobbins also gives you, he gives you that big play threat along with Lamar Jackson. Of course, we all know the Ravens, they're going to have to open up the passing game. They're going to have to let Lamar Jackson evolve as a passer by letting him have the reps in game situations, throwing the ball outside the numbers to these wide receivers. Don't be so dependent on the tight ends and just dumping the ball off to the tight ends. But I just think J.K. is just going to open things up for that offense as a whole. And it's going to take some of the pressure off Lamar because teams just can't, even though they've always had a nice running attack with Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards, but now you have a guy with some big playability to go along with Lamar Jackson out of the backfield. So, and then they've made some acquisitions as far as those receivers are concerned. But if you're going to make those acquisitions, Bateman and who else they getting free? But if you're going to make these acquisitions,
they brought in Sammy Watkins,
who stays injured, but he can be a big play threat. He can be a great. Well, I'm not going to say great receiver. When he came out of Clemson, I thought he would be, but he always has an ankle or a hamstring or something going on. But he's definitely an addition to that team.
Soft foot Sammy.
Yeah, he definitely. I like that. He definitely has an addition. He definitely adds an addition to that team.
No, much needed one. I mean, he's experienced. When healthy, he's good.
He's good. He's good. He's not great. He's good.
He gives that offense another threat that teams on defense will have to look at, and they can't really focus on and put the clamps on Marquise Brown. As talented as Brown is, I think he really struggled production-wise last year because teams were so focused on him, and they were almost even willing to let the tight ends run wild at times just to keep Marquise Brown at bay and not let him beat them with his speed over the top.
And you need to utilize Marquise Brown even more, I think. I mean, you drafted him in the first round from Oklahoma a few years back. But I think they can even incorporate him even more in the offense. Now you have Sammy Watkins over there. It will open up things more. But again, if you're going to make these acquisitions, you have to open up the offense and let Lamar Jackson get used to throwing the ball to these wide receivers. You have to instill in him that these wide receivers are vital to your success and our success. So we advise you to use them more often than not. But and then Lamar Jackson has to get better. He has to become more accurate to where the coaches feel confident that he can make those plays. Of course, if they don't feel that he can make those plays and he's going to be an accurate passer to those guys, they're not going to call those plays. But again, I just think he has to get those repetitions in the game. And I think if he does, that will open up things for Baltimore. We always know that they're going to have a tremendous defense. And
it'll be
tidbit real quick.
It'll show how much he's progressed whenever if you see him being able to sit in the pocket. If Marquise Brown has a good start to the season, he's scoring touchdowns, he's hitting the deep ball, then you're going to see that Lamar Jackson has developed his pocket presence and he's able to perform in the pocket, because there's no way, I'm not going to say no way, it's a lot harder to drive the ball downfield, to make passes down the field, to hit them deep windows if your timing's all thrown off because you're scrambling out of the pocket or you're flushing out of the pocket. And don't get me wrong, you can do a lot of damage that way. But whenever a team's got 2 weeks to gear up for you for a wild card round, and all they got to do is stop Lamar Jackson from beating them with the scramble, it seems like teams throughout this league have already figured out how to do that when it matters most.
Mm-hmm. Well, he definitely has to become more patient back there. And again, if he feels that the play, I mean, you just have to instill in him, hey, utilize your wide receivers. It's going to make things better for you. It's going to open things up for you. And then again, you have J.K. back there now, but he has to become more patient. And hopefully he's working on the fundamentals and his posture and things like that.
Being able to throw from the pocket, Greg, it allows you to see the entire field as well. The moment you flush, you're now if you flush the pocket or if you roll out, you're now a half of the field reading quarterback. That's all that's available to you, unless your name is one Patrick Aloysius Mahomes, who he can throw the ball from one side of the field to the other across his body, but there isn't anybody else in the league who can do that. And Lamar Jackson, he's not one of those guys. He needs to make sure he's keeping all his options open, because that's how that offense is most lethal.
That's how they're going to flourish, and he needs to build his confidence. The way you gain that confidence is to actually do it in the game. So the coaches, the coaches are going to have to help him in that regard, and he's going to have to build that confidence by seeing some success in those areas. Once he feels like he can drop back and he can survey the field, and he can throw a 20-yard out route, and he completes a couple where he hits the guy right in the chest, that's only going to make him even more confident in himself, and he's going to be willing to do it more times than not, and he's going to be looking forward to doing it, and he's probably going to be – and plus, at this point in his career, he has to preserve himself. I mean, the more you keep running, you want to run when you have to. Of course, you know that your legs are a weapon, but you want to have those other elements to your game, and it's only going to open up the running game for you. So I just thought that was interesting to see that they're going to incorporate J.K. Dobbins even more now.
They're
going to feature him more.
But I think it's a good point you make, because I think the NFL is evolving, and some people just on the surface look and think, hey, you got a quarterback who's got some legs. You're working with something. But I think you're limited in what kind of success you can have if that's all he can do. You need a quarterback people say this all the time, a running quarterback. I don't think you need a running quarterback. I think you need a damn good passing quarterback who's a damn good runner. And when you've got a guy who can do both, i.e. a Deshaun Watson, or a Patrick Mahomes, that's whenever you can really do some damage to NFL defenses. And so it remains to be seen here in Houston, if Deshaun Watson goes somewhere else, watch out because that whatever team he goes to, I think they instantly become contenders, especially if it's a team like Denver or
They say
Philly.
he wants to go to Denver.
You know, if it's a team like that, you know, then you're going to see those teams all of a sudden jump up the boards in Vegas when it comes to Super Bowl odds. But it's because of what the guy can do inside the pocket and outside of it. And Lamar Jackson, I mean, he's right there on the cusp. You know, if he don't get it done this season, they're going to be looking elsewhere than Greg Roman to run this offense because they don't have any more years of number 8 to waste trying to figure out how the hell they can get him more comfortable in an advanced passing game.
Right. So hopefully Harbaugh, he knows all this. He knows they have to incorporate more of a passing game, a more spread out passing game. And hopefully Lamar Jackson, which we know he is, we know he's working on those things. But again, he's going to have to build that confidence by actually getting the repetition in the game. Now, we're going to see how long, before we get out of here, we're going to see how long Cam Newton holds off Mac Jones. Cam is, I think he had a right hand injury last week, but we're going to see what Cam Newton does now with that revamped New England Patriots team. You know he's going to be very motivated to keep Mac Jones on the bench as long as possible. Now, did you see, talking about the way the New England Patriots run things, you see they put him in number 50 during camp. You see the way they do things? They bring him in as a first rounder, and they say, we're going to humble you up right when you walk through the door, and you're going to know what you're walking into and the culture that we have here. You're going to wear number 50 starting out in camp until you earn a quarterback number. So I just think that was a wise – it's so Bill Belichickian to do that because I don't think that Mac Jones chose that number on his own, even to wear in camp. At first when I saw it, I thought he did, but then I thought about it and I said, nah, that's Bill Belichick. That's Bill Belichick keeping him in line, getting him already acclimated to the Patriot way, and then he's going to earn that number 10 or what number, I mean,
I don't know, Greg. It's hard for me to look at that
but he has
and
some
not
swag,
say
though. He may try to wear number 50 just on GP just to do something different.
I don't think he can. But
I don't know.
This is one thing I look at and I
Belichick.
just kind of chuckle at, and it makes me wonder, like, how
Do you think it's overcoaching?
how old or is Bill Belichick finally at? How old is he? 60? What is he? 67, 65? What is he? He's in his 60s.
I think he's late 60s, early 70s.
Late 60s, early 70s.
Well, I think
okay.
Pete Carroll, believe it or not, is the oldest coach, probably like 70.
And he looks good for 70.
Very good.
But
for
it just
70.
makes me wonder if
Beautiful, exuberant. He's probably the most energized coach in the league at 70. I mean, he's 70.
in football terms, is Bill Belichick
69,
kind of
whatever it
is starting to get old? You know, because this seems like a very hokey kind of deal.
Bill Belichick,
I don't think. But is he doing too much here? I mean, I don't think Mac Jones.
I think it's kind of funny, actually.
It is kind of funny, but I mean, it just
I
seems
bet
like
Mac Jones finds it funny.
it
too.
seems like it's just a little bit too much. This is a guy who I understand that you're trying to keep his head small, but let's face it, this is the guy you chose to fill the shoes of number 12.
Right,
This is the one they handpicked to fill the shoes of number 12. It just seems a little hokey pokey to put the kid in 50. I mean, I know he's got to go out and earn it, but this just seems silly to me.
Man.
It just seems silly. I think something like this, this could be the first sign of Bill Belichick going a little senile. You know, we saw it with the other Bill Parcells. He started to do a lot of weird stuff towards the end of his career that may have made sense, you know, at a different time. But now it just showed, or at that time with Parcells, it just showed that where he was at, and maybe he was too stuck in his ways.
Yeah.
But until Bill Belichick starts losing consistently and somebody shows him the door, or Robert Kraft shows him the door, I don't think we could really question, his mental state. But this, I thought, was a very bizarre and silly thing to do to your first round draft pick and future star of the franchise. Yeah, it just makes no sense to me whatsoever.
You're going to wear number 50 until you earn it. But hey, man, that's crazy though, man. They put that man at number 50. But I like Mac Jones though, man.
They ought to put Cam Newton in 50 until he gets his completion percentage up over 50%. Then he can take off number 50. How about that?
Hey, we're gonna get out of here. It's been fun as always.
Hey,
Eddie
before
Cox,
we go, real
ahead.
quick, did you see Tyrann Mathieu and his tweet about Le'Veon Bell? Le'Veon Bell saying that he would never play for Andy Reid ever again. Not really divulging why exactly, but he says it's something that the coach told him, specifically to him, to his face. but Tyrann Mathieu called him out and said players love to blame, a lot of other people around. I'm paraphrasing here. The other people around them for not having success. Pretty much pointed at Le'Veon and saying, it wasn't you. I mean, it wasn't us the reason why you weren't any good. It was you. And I just want to pretty much.
Really?
Well, he didn't say that, but the tweet said players like to blame other people when they're not having success.
Right. Well, you know what? I think Le'Veon may be feeling some type of way about the Chiefs because I think now I wasn't there. I don't know. I'm willing to bet that Andy Reid probably promised him more playing time and more of a role in that offense. And for whatever reason, Le'Veon Bell wasn't able to garner that type of inclusion into that offense. And because I even thought that they would utilize him even more. Now I don't know if that's because Le'Veon Bell got there and Andy Reid saw that he probably wasn't the Le'Veon Bell that he remembered at Pittsburgh when he was having those great seasons, or what it was. But I think Le'Veon Bell probably thinks that there were some broken promises and that Andy Reid didn't do everything that he said that he would do in that handshake before he signed with the team, because Le'Veon probably feels that he could have signed with another team that wasn't as potent as Kansas City and maybe had more of a chance to really prove his worth.
Well, look, let me say this, and just to clarify exactly what Matthew said, there was another tweet to follow up Bell's tweet about never playing for Reid again that said, I wonder what made Bell say this. And Tyrann Mathieu gave the response, these fellas will blame everybody for their lack of success. That's how I know I'm built different. So he didn't say, specifically, but clearly he's referencing what Bell had to say. And look, this is another. I'm glad he said this. I want to commend Tyrann Mathieu. This is why this will always be one of my favorite players in the NFL because of the mindset that he has. Because he's not a me first kind of player, and he knows that he's got to go out and earn it every single down. He's faced a lot of obstacles coming into this league, a lot of adversity, coming in with being in the drug abuse protocol.
My bad.
And no, you good. And then things not working out, in Arizona, and then moving on. But I think he's bounced back tremendously, and because of the attitude that he has, and because he's not a me-first guy. He's a hard-working kind of guy, and the only person he's going to blame when he's not having success or he's not playing at his best, he's going to look himself square in the mirror.
He's a great
leader.
And
we don't get enough of that from a lot of these guys. And we've talked about it before. When we talked about Aaron Rodgers and how, because they haven't won a Super Bowl in the past 2 years, even though they've been right there on the cusp, how he seems to be putting the onus on the team when he should be wearing a little bit more of the responsibility on his own shoulders. And you see that with a lot of guys throughout the NFL. So I just want to give a high five to Tyrann Mathieu for calling Bell out, because he had every opportunity, Le'Veon Bell, to do some things.
Well, obviously.
Edwards-Helaire was not 100% in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They needed more of Bell.
Right.
You know why he didn't get the touches? Why he didn't get the plays? Why he didn't get out there? Because he's already lost it. He's lost a step.
That's what I'm saying.
He's not the same player.
Right, and that's what I thought when you first told me about that tweet. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe Le'Veon Bell did not show Andy Reid that he was still that same player back in Pittsburgh.
Without a doubt. There's no doubt.
Right, because that's why he couldn't get on the field like that.
They were going with Darrell Williams instead of Le'Veon Bell. Think about that. That says a lot, Greg.
I know. And I like the fact that Tyrann Mathieu had his coach's back right there. And Tyrann Mathieu is a guy who was a great leader. Again, when he came out of college, I thought the guy was going to be in all kinds of trouble, failed so many weed tests, hasn't gotten in trouble in the NFL. Came out of college and has seized the opportunity that he's gotten in the NFL and made the best of it. Was able to play on his college teammate and Patrick Peterson when he was in Arizona, and has been walking the straight and narrow ever since he's been in the NFL. Great leader. And obviously, I don't know the relationship that him and Le'Veon Bell has, but he's just calling it like he see it right there.
I just love it whenever real recognize real, man, and vice versa. And this is a guy, Le'Veon Bell, who the only person he has to blame for the derailing, I guess you could say, of his career is him, because he had it made in Pittsburgh, and they could have made a few more runs at it before he decided to blow the whole thing up and try to seek a few more $1 million.
My hand keep itching, man. Is it time for some more money, or what? Is it time for some?
Well, hell, I hope so. Throw some my way.
Hey, but shoot, you ready to bounce?
Hey, let's get out of here, man.
You know what?
Tremendous show, tremendous job by you today, Greg.
Likewise.
Everybody chiming in the comment section and following along. Tremendous job by you guys. It's why we do the show. We love to see you guys tuning in and commenting. Keep it coming and let us know what you want to hear. As you see, you tell me about it in the comment section. We will get to it and we will talk about it. And if you bring up something entertaining enough, we might just let you get in on the conversation live. If you're quick enough with the Twitter fingers, get in on it live. That's what we like. We love interaction from you guys.
And you know what, too, Eddie? We're going to get, you remember what we used to have at the other spot where we had it to where people can call in and people can hear them over the speaker? We're going to get that back rolling, too, so we can take some phone calls and really get you all's interaction. We love to do that and get more call-in interviews like we're used to and all this and that. So we're going to do that definitely, and we will be back next Tuesday. Legends live and let live.
I'll see you guys out at the ballpark on Thursday. If you catch me, hey, come have a beer with me or two. Who knows what's up? And I don't think it's Dollar Dog night, so don't ask me for no food because I ain't paying $12 and standing in line for 45 minutes for no hot dog. Only on Dollar Dog night will you catch me in that line.
There it is.
Hey, see you guys later. Good night. We're out.